Well, hello, and a very warm welcome to the latest episode of the brand new season of The Sound of Breaking Glass. I'm very excited to welcome Dion Johnson, who is a senior leader coach, author, speaker, and creator of the Queen School. Dion's story takes us from the maternity ward into the boardroom, from her days as a clinical midwife to becoming leadership coach for senior women who are ready to embrace a new style of leadership. Well, we'll talk about what it really means to step into your power, speak up, lead with confidence, and above all, with your own truth. So welcome, Dion. Very pleased to have you on the show today.
Excited, and congratulations on the new series.
Indeed, it's we've just been talking about how this is a little bit of a challenge for me because now so far I've been doing just audio recordings. This is the first video one, so I'm going to have to work on my video skills. Yeah. But we always talk about growth and pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. Yeah. So this is a little bit of that for me.
Yes. I'm sure we'll touch on that today. Lots of people like comfort zones and tend to stay in them. So salute for stepping out of yours.
There you go. Hopefully inspiring others along the way. But yeah. I'm really glad to have you on the show because maybe we should tell our listeners how we met. We were together in a container where we were both working on growth and other things. And we've both learned and evolved along the ways. And from the moment that I met you, I was like, oh, I really want to work with her and I really want to spend more time. And there's just something to be said about energy and how that works, isn't there?
I mean, I felt exactly the same. So it was quite a large container, quite a few women in there, and certain women stand out, and you stood out. So the fact that we made our way to each other is not really a surprise to me.
Well, I've been thinking along the same lines, and I think that it's been a long journey to get here, I think, including with the podcast, and it's really, as you said, a celebration of what it is. I think for me, I always start with a little bit of a background because I just introduced you, but it would be good to know how you ended up doing what you're doing now, leadership coaching. There's so many, I suppose, people who might think what that is or what that entails. And I'd like to think that you do something quite a bit different. Yeah. So maybe you can tell us how you started, how you ended up here and what you do now.
So, we could go way back if you like. I grew up in a family of immigrants from Jamaica, activists, community builders, people who exampled for me the call to do something about things, to not just moan, but to be active in creating solutions or making things better, or serving people and making people's lives better. So that was my example growing up. My mum's a staunch, even today, she's 85, but she's still, out there doing her thing in the community, building, bringing people together. And so that was a very strong influence for me growing up. And also, a lot of the women in my family were nurses. They came in the Windrush generation to build the healthcare after the war. People... the NHS was really suffering and it needed manpower, so it called to the Commonwealth for people to come and, serve and build up the motherland. And so that was kind of my history. I saw activism and I saw caring for people and I saw nursing. And so that's where I went, I kind of found myself following that path of nursing and then midwifery. And as I got more mature as a midwife, realizing that these women that I'm serving, one, they're badass, they're very, very powerful. Women are powerful. I really learned in midwifery just how powerful women are.
Because that's a moment when you're so vulnerable, and yet you have to pretty much use all your strength to stay there and to deliver.
Well of resource that we have, we're just badass. We're powerful, and I saw that in midwifery was my school of womanity. Really taught me how powerful women are. But then I got fed up of midwifery. It's really hard work. It's really, and you can't be half-assed about it. You have to, you have to be in it or not. So it was time for me to move on, and I didn't know where to move on to. And I found myself in local government, a very bureaucratic. I was a director managing a really big project as a regional director, lots of responsibility, lots of big budget, to do really important work that I cared about. From my activism examples, I wanted to close the inequalities gap. I wanted equity. I wanted people's lives to be better. And I really thought that was what I was going to be doing when I went into local government. But
the reality was a bit different.
And it was disillusioning. I didn't really, two things happened was I couldn't see how, if we carried on doing this, we were going to make a difference in the society. And I also couldn't find my feet to express the power that I knew that I had to lead and to make a difference. I just wasn't feeling like I could express it there. And so that led me on to coaching. That led me on to a bold step. One year I just decided, if I stay here, I'm going to die. And that's maybe not physically, but, die off at my desk like so many people do. And I just wasn't prepared to do that. So I decided that I was going to take the leap into what I didn't know. But I knew that I wanted to help people. I knew that I had the gift of communication. I was a conversationalist. I knew that I had a natural knack at helping people from my midwifery. And it's evolved. It's evolved into this, where now I get to coach women in senior leadership with change in mind, with change making and difference making in mind. So that's how I got here in a nutshell.
But I was thinking, and I want to go back to that moment where I think many of us stumble, which is letting go of any safety net. And you said, I let go. I decided this was just not for me anymore. I couldn't imagine doing that any longer. And yet you didn't know what you were going to do next. And there was that period of in between. And that to me is very interesting, because here we talk about that space in between. So what happens then?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, the pain got bad enough for me to want to leave without knowing what next. I tried.
What was that pain? What was it?
I didn't know who I was. I'd experienced it even going into local government. I experienced it moving from midwifery into local government. I'd experienced this very same thing. I'd sunk so much effort into becoming this leader in midwifery that I didn't know how that applied anywhere else. I didn't know what else I could be or who else I was. So moving into local government was a big leap for me. And then when it came time, when I realized that I wasn't in the right place, that this wasn't going to be it for me, I felt those very same feelings of, but I've got here now, like, this is all right. I'm getting paid. I know where my money's coming from. I can manage my bills and things. And I can't shake this boat. I can't walk away from this security. I don't know what else I would do. I couldn't see myself beyond the role. And I think when I speak to people, I hear this a lot, that they've sunk so much into getting here that now they're here, it feels too scary or just even foolish to rock that boat and to move on. So, yeah. And when I did, I remember it really well. I left. I remember walking out with my box with my bits in. And then the very next morning, waking up and saying, shit,
what have I done?
What the heck have I done? Yeah. And I think that was the first day of a 6-month walking around in my dressing gown, going, oh my God, like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? What's life about for me?
Because so people make it so glamorous. Okay, it's a day of freedom.
Oh, God.
And maybe it is for some, if you've had time to prepare and to know and figure out your next step, but you didn't. And we've often talked about this, including one of the teachers that we're sharing common, that you could really, you did the double whammy, and you really went for it, and you didn't have a plan, and that was quite a big shock to your system, but you were able to withstand it. And for some other people, it might make sense to do that in small steps and figure it out as they go.
I think it's part of my nature. I'm a bit impetuous, and when I look back, I see that was just, I'm glad I did it that way. It was a really powerful experience, because in those 6 months in my dressing gown, I got to ask myself some really tough questions. Like, what the heck is my life about? Those big questions. Like, who am I? What do I bring to the table? Which table do I want to bring it to? That was what I was asking. I didn't really get very clear answers, but it gave me enough of clarity about the first steps, that I knew that in that inquiry, I call it a sovereign inquiry now, but in that inquiry, I was looking for what's the very next thing that I want to do here. What I don't know everything, but what do I know? What am I certain about? And that's when I realized that I'd grown up in that family. I'd had all this experience. I'd done all this work in midwifery. I'd done all this work in local government. I can just there's something in here for me. So I started knocking on doors, having coffees with people that I'd worked with, telling them about what was happening, where I was, finding out where they were. And one step led to another.
Were you initially thinking that you might be looking for another job before realizing that actually you are the job, so to speak, you are the brand, and you are actually going to be self-employed and work for yourself rather than anyone
honestly,
else.
That didn't even occur to me to be looking for another job. It
knew?
didn't even occur to me. In fact, I've only just realised, you asking me now, that actually that was just never, ever on the cards. But I didn't know anything about business. I didn't consider myself entrepreneurial. I didn't even consider myself creative at that point. And, it's really poignant to be pointing all of this out, because I think that me leaving was the beginning of me wanting to find out who I was really and what my life meant, like the bigger questions, and I think that's what happened.
And now you're helping others find the answers to those big questions. But you did bring up a big word in there, sovereignty, and I know that you use that a lot, and I wanted to ask you what that means to you and how perhaps you use that in your work with clients, and maybe touch on the Queen's School as well, because I can tell our listeners and viewers that the moment I saw that pop up on my LinkedIn, I was like, ooh, there's something about this that I want to explore.
Yeah.
It's not what you might think, Queen's School. It's nothing to do with with any royal family. It's something very different, isn't it?
It really, really is. So I mean, that's a big question, I left life as I'd known it, and I was on my way to discovering who I was. And pretty soon after that, I hit a really dark time, like a dark night of the soul, I've heard it called. And I heard these questions rising up within me. Why are you hiding?
What were you hiding and why?
I was hiding myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was hiding myself, and I didn't know. Like I'd done all the right things, like gone to school, to university, I trained as a midwife, trained as a nurse. I was doing all the right things and leading, but I had never really asked myself, who am I and what do I want to do? With why am I here? What's my life about? I'd never asked myself those questions. So this opportunity, this dark night of the soul, really pointed something out to me that I was hiding. And it was physical. It was a physical hiding, because I was born with a facial disfigurement. And when I was 4 years old, as part of the corrective process, I was gifted an artificial eye and dark glasses, these big dark glasses that would fit over my face. They were like sunglasses.
It's like a mask.
Yeah, they were
You're
masks.
hiding your face.
Exactly. But I didn't know that then. I didn't have all of that language then. But that's exactly what they were. So I learned as part of that process that, my face was disfigured, and that's what you do with disfigured things.
You hide it.
You hide it. That's what you do when things aren't normal. That's what you do when things don't fit, don't match the mold, you hide it. I didn't know I was learning that lesson, but I'd been living my life like that since 4 years old, just hiding myself, being who they wanted me to be, showing up how you expect, trying to fit into that group, trying to not stand out. And that's what was coming up in my dark night of the soul. It was time for me to learn to show up for real. And I just didn't have any clue what that meant. I didn't know what it meant. Back then, 15 years ago, I was talking about you seeing my real face, but without the physical masks, right? But it very quickly turned into you seeing the real me, like Dion. And so I've been on this incredible journey of learning who I am. It's been a spiritual journey for me, a faith walk, and there's been soul searching and Bible study and scripture reading and praying and real inner work, searching for the answers about who I am. And I've discovered that there are, for us, all of us, that there are kind of different versions of I. So when we talk about I and me, we're not always talking about the same person, that there's a lower nature of us. I call her little leader with a slave girl mind, and highness, sovereignty, born for a reason, called and chosen, destined for greatness, connected to all that there is, made in the image and likeness. I say God, made in the image of likeness of God. And that this journey has really captured my imagination around that aspect of me, and now the people that I work with. Yeah, the Queen. So,
and I suppose if you've never gone through that journey, it would have been very difficult for you to navigate that with others.
Oh my God, I'm a black woman in a white man's world. I'm facially disfigured in a beauty obsessed world. I'm a woman of faith in a secular and religion phobic world. Like, these things gave me really clear indication. There were messages coming from everywhere about what that meant for me. And there was these inbuilt, programmed understandings about my place in the world based on all of these messages, right? And so this was where this programmed me met this higher me, and I've been on this journey of very real inner, personal, deep, dark work of deciding that I'm going to be her. I'm going to show up in my world as her.
Be the Queen. I mean,
as the Queen, yeah.
And now I help all the darkness, but there's also been so much light, I think, God, and all the good thing that came out of it on the other side. Yeah. And I know that you mentioned about being spiritual, having faith, and I think that you're right. It's certainly been a strange world, and not everyone's been comfortable talking about this. But yet, I do find, and I'd like to believe perhaps, that more and more people are awakening, and maybe they define it in different ways. Yeah. Maybe they just call themselves spiritual, or they just start to believe in energy and that there's something bigger and better out there, that we're not on our own, so to speak, in the most positive way. So I wonder if that comes up a lot with the people that you work with the work that you do, within the Queen School, and generally with the mission that you've set out for yourself now.
Yeah, so for sure. So the people that come to me now, that I work with, CEOs, directors, heads, corporate experts and specialists, women who are really about something in the corporate space, and they are going through their own awakening. They're waking up to the realization that they think that there's more for them to be, there's more for them to do, say, create, for them to experience and express as a woman and a leader and a change maker. So that's what they come to me for, that work. And so it's invariably going to touch on all aspects of themselves. So we look at what they know academically, what they, their intelligence around their subject and their field. But we also talk about emotional things and their emotional intelligence and their spiritual intelligence. Like, you just can't get away with doing this work without having these deeper questions and inquiries about why they're there, who they are and what they bring. So it's a natural part of the work that you and I know this because we're involved in growing in the same way, right?
Yeah, actually, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think, and that's the question that kept coming up in my head, and I think it's important for our listeners as well, do you think that the clients that you attract are a reflection of who you are? Which is why that work that we talked about, the deep dark work, was so important.
All the way through, for the last 15 years, I've had people saying to me things like, oh God, you're so brave. You're so brave talking about the things that you talk about. Like, you're so brave about bringing that side of thing into it, because there's this kind of a belief that you don't show that side of yourself.
Is that the spiritual side?
Yeah, the spiritual side, or even the human side, dare I say it.
Business,
business is business. Like, you kind of put your work head on, you put your mask on, and you go in and you stiff up a lip in England, and, you kind of hide. Hiding is prevalent in the culture of business. And so people would say to me all the time, you're brave, you're brave. I didn't feel brave. I was going through my stuff, but they knew that it was different. And so I think even this morning I had a conversation with a client who said the reason that I came to you was because you were giving voice to some of the things that were happening on the inside. I'm seeing that women are waking up to a realization that, there's more for me to be, and I can't fit into the boxes. I can't stay hidden behind this mask anymore. I want to express myself, and the pain of wanting to express yourself is just giving way to the freedom, the liberty to really do that.
And they see perhaps in you that reflection, that's where they're going to get to at the end of the journey. But I do sometimes wonder, because you started your career, so to speak, as a midwife. I mean, are there some lessons that you've taken from that? Because ultimately you've always been drawn to helping people, specifically working with women. And I think oftentimes I hear from other women or people in general saying that they wish they hadn't wasted time doing this and that. They wish they'd come sooner, but ultimately there's always lessons in these steps in between. So I'm wondering what you took from those previous experiences.
As you were talking, the word that was coming up for me is process. So, a woman doesn't just end up in labour ward. Like, there's a very long journey that goes towards a woman getting pregnant. It involves the feminine and it involves the masculine. And that's exactly the same when you're talking about leadership careers or careers generally, professional lives. It's a process. So I see people who are beating themselves up because they've wasted so much time on this, or they feel like they've gone the wrong way. It's never the wrong way. It's all part of the process. It's all part of bringing you to this place where you say, okay, I'm ready for something more now. Like, you don't get ready just like that. You get ready as a result of walking out a journey. So honour for the journey and the process is really a very powerful lesson from my days as a midwife. I can really see that even when it's time for you to bring something new forward, there's a process that goes on with that. So
yes, we're often, and I'm certainly guilty for one, of sometimes wanting to jump a little bit too quickly between stages, but you learn with experience. And I guess some people move faster, some people move at their own pace, and it's always, I think, one of my biggest lessons that keeps coming now. I don't know what's with that period that we're in now, mid-September, but lessons keep coming back. It's just about a little bit more patience with people. But I want to go back to something that you said about masculine and feminine, and how does that work in business? Because you and I have talked a lot about this, but I think for most people that sounds very wishy-washy. What do these women mean when they say very masculine and feminine? What's that all about? And what's the danger of not doing that?
So first of all, I think masculine and feminine are on a continuum. Masculine one end, feminine's the other end, but it's all part of the same continuum. It's energy that expresses itself. So creation is a balance between masculine and feminine. We see it really powerfully and obviously in midwifery. When you're talking about making a baby, we understand. But it really is a balance. When you're creating anything, masculine and feminine is part of the same creative continuum. And I like to think of masculine as men as stewards of the masculine and women as stewards of the feminine. But that we both need both. We all of us, creation needs both. So both operating on the inside of me, both operating on the inside of you, and we can move along that continuum. So the masculine, I think about it like, the kind of pushing. Like if you were to be building a house, you need the masculine. You need bricks. You need measurements. You need lines. You need concrete. You need. It's very structured, very hard, very pushy, very.
Lots of doing.
Yeah, lots of doing. Right. But if you were to want to make that house into a home, then you need something else, right? You need understanding, you need people, you need warmth, you need listening, you need laughter, you need talking, you need
The atmosphere.
you're right, atmosphere
heart.
building. They're both required. The house needs to be built and the home needs to be built with masculine and feminine. And so that's a crude example, but I'm hoping that really helps to say that it's a continuum. We have it. We operate with both. And what I see is that in the marketplace, it's highly masculine. It's highly
Is that just
geared
coaching
towards
or anything?
just the culture of business and the culture of the marketplace and the culture of senior leadership, frankly, is highly masculine and often distorted. It's gone beyond the boundaries of healthy even. So it's quite a lot of pushing, and women within that space feel like they have to push, they have to act a certain way, they have to hide, they have to perform, they have to fit in with that masculine culture and lose their feminine expression. So many women that I work with, excuse me, and that was my experience too, just lose connection with that real important part of our essence and that expression. It wasn't even required, except now it's a new day. And, we had the pandemic 5 years ago, which shone a really powerful spotlight on the fact that business is being required to see itself and do itself differently. And that's a whole different ballgame when it comes to leadership. I think that's where the masculine and feminine dynamic comes into a conversation of its own, because I think now we're seeing that, the marketplace leadership needs an infusion of the feminine, needs to be balanced out. The toxicity of the masculine needs to be balanced with healthy, strong, powerful, badass feminine.
And this is what you and I talked about, that I think there's a narrative out there that often it's like, as if you're a woman and you happen to be in that environment, you have to leave.
Yeah.
And that's the way out, and then you're safe, and then it's good. And you're saying something different here. It's not about leaving or changing.
Yeah.
It's actually about staying, but changing first yourself.
Oh my gosh.
And then everything starts to change around you.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. I want to tell this little story. I was walking along the street one day, just walking on the street, talking to my friend. And then before I knew it, I felt this big thud in my back. And I went flying. I went flying down on my face. A girl, I think she had some kind of mental health issue. She just took issue with me and she literally punched me in my back and I went flying down. I think about that time often because I couldn't stop myself from falling down. The thud was so heavy that I just went flying down, but it felt like in slow motion. And when I think back over that fall, it feels like in slow motion. So I get to experience that falling without being able to do anything about it. And over the years, when I've been speaking to women in leadership, I see that all the time. It's like they go into senior leadership and it hits them so hard. They can't help but fall. So women are burning out, women are unwell, women are unhappy. There's a whole load of statistics.
Health-related issues that come.
Because they got hit so hard, they're just falling, like they can't help but to fall for it.
So how do you get up?
But I say, when I think back to my falling, I think if I had just seen her coming, if I had just, braced myself somehow, or if I was just ready for the impact, if I had just been kind of privy
you
to
could have avoided it.
I could have just avoided it altogether, or I could have been in a place where, I would experience it, but it wouldn't have knocked me over like that. So spectacularly, I
Awareness.
fell. Right. And so I think that's the key. I think that we have these women who I believe, and they are waking up to the fact that they're born to do something about this toxicity, about the potential for business to do better things in the world. But when they go into these spaces, it's like they're stepping into a ring. I say, be prepared for the ring. Be supported to get in the ring. be galvanized, be strengthened in ways that are really accessible now. Coaching's accessible. Studying and preparing yourself for leadership at such a time as this is available. Unlocking your spiritual codes and your emotional codes and your savvy, your brilliance, your genius, like unlocking those things is like bracing yourself for the assignment. It's like getting yourself ready so that the impact doesn't overpower you and knock you over. Actually, you stand firm and you affect it. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a similar situation. I'm not going to go into details, but again, I did have a similar escape, and I must say it happened to me because in the streets of London, of course, these things happen from time to time, and I often think, luckily, I escaped from what could have been a much worse situation, but I think, how did I get there in the first place? And I know it was at the time when I was really not feeling well about myself emotionally. And I had a lot of things to work on, and maybe it was a coincidence, but I often think that it's such a low point in my life. It was a few months before COVID hit, and then a lot of things unraveled from that. But I sometimes think that there are ways that we could just avoid putting ourselves in those situations.
And herein lies the work. I call it the real work.
The Queen School.
Yeah, Queen School, right. Because that's what Queen
that.
School is about. Women who want to be more powerful at work in leadership. They want to be more presenceful. They want to be more prominent, but they're experiencing all the stuff that they're experiencing. And so it's the work to get yourself ready, to understand your narrative, to understand how your nervous system is responding to life, to understand how your mindset, your self-perception, the way that you see yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you handle yourself, the way that you make decisions. Like this is the real work of preparing to be effective and have staying power and to be powerful in your role as a leader.
And you could do it on your own, but it's just like anything else. It could take you longer. I mean, I could get, I don't know, somehow my own phone to film this, but is it going to be the same? It's just a lot of these things. Sometimes we try and take the shortcut, and it's not really a shortcut.
I mean, that goes back to the different eyes, because, the little leader with a slave girl with a slave girl mind will be asking herself, is it frivolous to be supported in this way? Queen would never ask herself that question. Like, Queen expects to be supported. She doesn't do anything on her own. But learning how to. They're different operating systems. There are different mindsets. This lower nature, us, thinks in completely different ways. She's surviving. Her drive is to survive. Whereas your higher nature, your queen, is about leadership, is about making the difference that you're here to make. And so you don't want to be fiddling around with cameras. You want to be supported with that, so that the message can come out and people can benefit, right? Yeah. And that's just a very queenly thing to do.
I know, and I call it something different. I call it the rich girl mentality. And I often, in the beginning of my own journey, I was thinking, well, what does rich girl mentality mean? And I was thinking about all those girls that I've seen that I was a little bit envious inside of me, thinking, oh, they have the support of their families, they come from the right background, they have someone, husband, father, to help them. But actually they don't. And they do, but it's not that. It's not the money that they get access to that makes them successful and effective to the envy of others. It's the fact that they just operate from a place of knowing that everything is going to be okay. Someone will be there to take care of me. Mm-hmm. So what I always say is, instead of sitting there waiting for the day when you get someone else to pay your bills or something to come to you and then do it the other way around, the rich girl mentality, and be like, oh no, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And then the money and everything else will come, because I know that it will. And that completely shifts the perspective.
That's so powerful. I think if anything, if people are watching this and wondering where to start with that, I'm hearing somebody say, well, it's all right for you. It's all right for you. You can afford this, or it's all right for you. You're like this, or you're like that. So the invitation is to say, it's all right for you too.
It's everywhere these days, so you can't help it with social media, with everything. And we're talking about something else here. Just leave that to one side. And
but I think the invitation is to say, you know what, it's all right. It's all right for her, yes, but it's all right for me too. That I am and I can. you know?
And that's what I wanted to ask you towards the end of this episode. I always like to finish with two questions.
Yeah.
And one is, let's start with this. What is what actually drives you? Why are you doing this? I think you touched a little bit on this. And I think everyone who's been here in the studio can tell just how passionate you are just talking about this. And you can feel the energy. And I'm sure they can as well. But why does this matter to you so much? And where do you hope this journey will take you?
Yeah, I really care about the state of our world. I really do. And I think it's a leadership issue. I think it really matters. The state of leaders really matters. And I believe that women are just underexpressed as leaders. And I think we need to do something about that. I think I was born to do something about that. So that really is what drives me. I've realised that that's who I am. That's how God wants to express itself through me, is to raise the standard of leadership in the world, and that's what drives me. And what was the other question?
Well, the very important question is, where do you hope the Queen's School is gonna take you? What is it gonna grow into? What's your ambition or vision? And I know this keeps evolving as you evolve, but where is it now?
So I have this body of work now over these years. I've been gathering this body of work called Sovereign Intelligence. So it is really, Queen's School is about teaching women how to step into their sovereignty, how to embody their highness as women and leaders and change makers. And so Queen's School will be travelling the world. It will be 1 day or 3 day retreat where we just go through the principles of sovereign intelligence, we make it personal, and we ignite your embodiment journey. Like, that's what's happening all around the world. It's been going really well so far, so let's see where it goes.
And because we did touch a little bit on role models, I wanted to ask a question related to this, and perhaps also share my own personal experience around being a role model, because I think often we like to fantasize, and that's happened to me, that's a very comfortable role to be in, with people looking up to you and inspiring others, whether it's senior business leaders or somebody else. But the reality is that there's a very big burden that you're carrying on your shoulders. And I think oftentimes, I've been thinking about this recently, that we tend to forget that we are, or at least allow others who aspire to be like us, for example, more junior colleagues, or it could be just anybody else who's inspired by us, that we're not perfect. We all make mistakes. And actually, quite recently, I had something that literally hit me over the head. I didn't see it coming at all. Back to perhaps your example about what hit you in the back. And sometimes there are these experiences that just hit you and remind you that you're not perfect, that you make mistakes. And I suppose that's the important lesson that I wanted to put out there, that as a leader, we're all human. And I think we often, especially as women, don't allow ourselves to make these mistakes. We talk so much about queen and sovereignty, but is there any room for error, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I don't believe in failure. I really just believe in lessons, and that's with my when I was operating from my lower self, I was really hard on myself with mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and I'm fallible, and I fall off my throne, and all of those things. And in my lower nature, I beat myself up so badly about that. But when I dare to step into my highness and think about them from that perspective, they're always just lessons. I say everything is Queen's School. Everything is teaching you. Everything is bringing some kind of gold for this ascension process. So for you to operate in your life, in your leadership, in your world from this high place. And so I don't believe in failure.
I like how you've reframed it. And I think it probably, I often get the question as well around, what is Sound of Breaking Glass? What does that mean? And what is Business by Poetry? Business is Poetry, which is my new brand. And I think it's just a bit like you described it, a place of finding a different way of doing work and thinking about business. It's about bringing more art to it. It's about bringing more joy to it. It's about bringing more of yourself to it. And I wanted to create a hub which hosts all of those things. And I know that with the Queen's School and with the codes that you've worked on, you've pretty much created the same. And I'm just so excited to see how that's going to expand, and what other parts of the world are going to benefit from your your presence, your teachings, and what exciting collaborations are going to come out of it. So where can people find you next? What's next?
Well, do you know what? I hang out on LinkedIn. I'm going for a rebrand myself. So my website's down currently, but my business is called Dion Johnson Global. So watch out and come and find me on LinkedIn, because I'm there every day and you'll see what's happening real time on LinkedIn.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today, and I can't wait to see what's ahead for you.
Thank you so much, Hristina. It's been brilliant talking with you.